This is Head Speaks, a proud member of the Headcast Network family of shows. As usual, I am your host, Aaron Moss, aka Brother Head. And this is my, mostly monthly Headcast, where I talk about comics, movies, role-playing games, TV shows, and anything else geeky that I want. Sometimes I'm alone, sometimes I manage to con a guest onto the show. So if you like comic books like Firestorm and the Atom, or movies like Back to the Future, or even the Star Wars sequels, or anything else geeky, this is the place for you. So let's get the flux capacitor fluxing, the TARDIS tarting, and let's say Shazam! On with this episode of Head Speaks.
Right that which is wrong, and to serve all mankind.
Hey, dear listeners, Brother Head coming at you. This is Head Speaks, episode
69, dudes!
And once again, I'm in the Headcast Studios alone. I decided not to bring Chad on board. He seemed a little interested in the power of the atom, but since this show is called Head Speaks, it's mostly my thoughts on it. And I don't mind having an occasional guest. I enjoy that, but I don't know if he's going to work out on here. So Chad went back over to the Lanterncast. So definitely check out the lanterncast.com. Chad's a great guy, even though I don't know if I agree with some of his opinions, especially on Starman, but that's another story entirely. We'll talk about that over there. But yeah, no, it was definitely good having Chad around for an episode. But let's get back to Brother Head voicing his opinion on Head Speaks. So, first up this episode.
Faster than a speeding bullet. In the great hall of the Justice League,
Spider-Man and his amazing friends.
the Justice League of America versus the Legion of Doom. This is
What's in Head's Long Box?
Dedicated to truth, justice, and peace for all mankind. The world's greatest super friends.
So, once again, we're going to continue our dive into Power of the Atom. This is issue 10. So, this was cover dated March of 1989, but on sale January the 31st of 1989. Cover price was $1. The editor of this was, again, Mike Carlin. The title of the story was called Bah Humbug. The writer was Roger Stern, penciler Graham Nolan, inker Keith Stan Wilson, letterer Albert Tobias de Guzman, colorist Nancy Houlihan. The cover was done by Graham Nolan and Keith Wilson. And again, from Wikipedia, the synopsis is that a superpowered mercenary is hired to attack the Atom. The mercenary follows Ray Palmer and learns his schedule. When Ray is set to meet with a book publisher, Humbug ambushes him. What's not a problem with that word? They fight in the office of the publisher until the Atom gets the upper hand. Humbug then vanishes, leaving behind an empty-bodied, shaped skin. Just a quick synopsis. Again, I do these on and off. I've had people suggest I don't do them because the way I review these books, I actually, if you've been listening to me anyways, I actually kind of do a synopsis, or I talk about the issues I go through it. So anyways, but I decided to read that one this time. Again, it's the way my head works sometimes. But let's go ahead and actually talk about this issue of Power of the Atom. So our cover starts out with the Atom. He's on his knees, his hand is on his head, like he's really confused or suffering a mental breakdown is almost what it looks like. We have our logo, Power of the Atom. Below that it says, who is, what is, Humbug. And the rest of the cover, the background's green with images of Humbug all around the Atom, a bunch of question marks. It's an interesting cover. When I think of the Atom, this is what I do think of. I do like it. Would I hang it on the wall as a poster? Probably not, but it's an enjoyable cover, and it kind of tells us sort of what's going on in this issue. I mean, Ray's not as confused or as lost as he appears on this cover, but it does give the what the heck of Humbug. So it's a good cover in my opinion. For the story itself, we start out with Humbug sitting in a chair on a giant round, I don't know if it's a globe or a giant round screen. I want to say it looks like almost like a globe or like a crystal ball, if you will. We see a close-up, a bust shot of the Atom, and he's talking to somebody. Well, actually, at this point, someone's talking to him, basically hiring him to go after the Atom. And I like this. The guy's the voice is talking. It's like, this is your new assignment, humbug. Raymond Palmer, Doctor of Physics, formerly of Ivy University, though he's better known in the guise as the Atom. And Humbug's like, you move after a superhero. Tell me more. And so as this nameless voice, bodiless voice, however you want to phrase it, is talking to Humbug, we see the Atom fighting a guy in a metal suit while the voice behind him is basically catching everyone up. If this is your first time reading the Atom, it's letting you know what's going on. Is that, some years ago, he discovered a way to reduce his mass and volume. He became a superhero. And then 18 months ago, following the breakup of his marriage, he disappeared. He wrote a book about his double life, and then he disappeared from sight. And 6 weeks ago, he reappeared. So it's basically telling us that the last 9 issues has all happened in a 6-week time frame. So I do like that this is actually giving us some sort of a time frame for how everything's worked, because we know that 18 months ago is when the first Sword of the Atom special came out, as far as continuity wise. And then 6 weeks ago is when the first issue happened, or second issue of this series happened. So it kind of lays it out and gives us a time frame. And I do like when it gives us some, in quotes, real world time frames to work with. So again, as the voice continues talking, explaining that, he's very independent, and, the CIA and the Justice League has both approached him and he's turned them down. Humbug's watching the Atom fight, watching his fight moves, punching and kicking and stuff, and Humbug's duplicating it exactly. Humbug at this point, just from this page 2, to me is very reminiscent of, I think it's the Taskmaster over at Marvel. He can see what someone does and he can duplicate their moves exactly. So it's an interesting concept to begin with. And as he's doing practicing these moves, and the voice in the background's talking, he's like, however, our studies indicate that he is very independent. Humbug, we'd appreciate if you would at least give us a modicum core of your attention. He's like, I haven't missed a single disembodied syllable. You were saying that Palmer is very independent. And again, the voice goes on that he's worked with others before, such as the old Justice League, but he's not what they would call a good team player. And as Humbug's listening to this voice, he's looking around. Apparently, he's recently moved into this residence he's in, because there's a pipe laying on the ground. He's mentioning, Plumber's always leaving the place a mess. The voice is like, Humbug, nothing, go on. And as he's listening, Humbug pulls off his glasses, and we see he's got a fake nose. And so his face, we see I haven't really described his face. At this point, his face is just it's an average looking, plain looking face, I guess, except for he's got no nose, kind of reminiscent of Voldemort from Harry Potter, but even less. I mean, it's just a flat surface. He's got white eyes of no pupils. His eyebrows go kind of up in a sinister mode, and he's got like a kind of a jokerish grin. So, and as he's talking, the voices are reminding him or telling him that the Atom is very powerful and very resourceful and not to underestimate him. And Humbug's like, the Atom has some good moves, but I can handle anything he dishes out. And he picks up the pipe he was talking about earlier that he noticed, and he bends it in half. So at this point, we know he's super strong. He can copy other people's fight moves, it looks like, and he has no nose. So yeah, I do like this introduction. This is our first appearance of Humbug. This is his first appearance anywhere as a new character. So I do like the way we're getting introduced. We're getting a little bit of what he can do. Again, I've already outlined his abilities that we know so far. But I do like that we're giving, I think, a good introduction to Humbug. And the voice also talks about how he's recently fought an alien invasion. He went up against Kronos and defeated his death traps that were laid out for him. And here's where they mention that, the CIA has been shadowing Ray and his friends. And so we know that whoever this voice is talking to Humbug is apparently not the CIA. It may be some other government entity we don't know at this point, but it's not the CIA. So Humbug's like, the CIA? This has become much more interesting. Where's Palmer now? We're told that he's hanging out with Emeritus Alphys V. Hyatt, a college professor, used to be one of Ray's college mentors, and he has a small laboratory behind his home on Ivy Town's East Hill. And I like this transition as we cut over to Professor Hyatt's house. We have a nice outside view of it, and from behind the house we see 76, 77, 78. And here we get our title sequence, Bah Humbug, a reference to A Christmas Carol's, Scrooge, Bah Humbug. I'm not sure if that's where the character came from anyway, or I'm not sure how tied the origins of the idea, I guess, of this character is to that, or if it's just a neat story idea. I'm not quite sure. But we have Ray, he's in just a pair of shorts and shoes, tennis shoes, doing one-handed push-ups, 79, 80, 81, 82. And Enrique's telling him, well, be careful, you don't want to overdo it. Yeah, don't worry, Ricky. It's 87, 88, I could do this all day. 80, 92, 93, just a few more reps. 99 or 97, and I'll quit. 99, 100, and done. He's as he's doing these one-handed push-ups, his arm behind his back. He's turned to a side of it so he can look at Enrique, and he's smiling as he's doing these push-ups. As he flips himself back up on his feet, and Enrique is kind of impressed. She's like 100 one-handed push-ups on each side, and you're barely perspiring. You're amazing. And Ray admits here that not really. Anyone reasonable shape could do the same, especially if they could mentally decrease their mass and weight. So it sounds like he's decreased his mass and weight to do the push-ups. I love Ray, don't get me wrong, but I think that may be cheating. I don't know if you reduce your weight down to nothing, if doing 100 push-ups is really going to help. Again, if you see me, I'm an overweight guy. I'm not big into push-ups, so maybe I'm wrong, but I think part of the benefit or some of the effect of the push-up is pushing your weight up. So if you don't weigh anything, you're just going up and down with no weight. I don't know if that's really helping anything. If anyone out there is into weightlifting or into bodybuilding or push-ups and knows that I'm wrong, please let me know. But that's just my own thoughts on it. And again, after they get done talking, Ray changes into the Atom costume. And at this point, he's off screen doing it. In one panel, we see him in his shorts and his tennis shoes with a towel around his neck. And he says he's going to change. Enrique tells him to change his work clothes. He says, only if you promise not to peek. And Enrique kind of closes her eyes and, oh, Ray, you silly goose. And Ray turns into the Atom. And here we're seeing a blinding light. I'm saying it's a blinding light because Professor Hyatt's also got his eyes kind of squinting. And Ray again explains, as we're going through, as we talked about last issue, this story appears to be good jumping on point because we got kind of Ray's origins and history earlier. Now he's talking about his powers, how he can just thank himself in his costume. He can thank himself? He can thank and his costume just appears. And that's the white dwarf matter doing most of the work. Otherwise, it's tucked into it. So again, it kind of explains everything about Ray in this book. So if this was your first issue, you're like, oh, okay, that's his origin. That's how it works. Okay. It makes a little more sense. And they also mentioned that, there is the visible emissions, which is the light that accompanies the transfer. And Enrique says, what doesn't happen all the time. And he's like, do you need a why? And he's like, I've never really thought about it. And Enrique's wondering if it's an emotional response. And I like the way this plays out. He's standing in front of Enrique and Professor Hyatt on a stand, and they're attaching some monitors to his chest, to his costume. And as they're talking, Ray's, saying, well, I've never really thought about it before. And as she touches hooks the thing up to him, he kind of giggles. And she's like, perhaps it's an emotional response. No, I've always been ticklish there. So I do. And she's like, no, I'm talking about the light display, you moron. So I do like the way that Roger wrote the dialogue in this. It shows that these three are friends and there's this snappy, back and forth dialogue and the joking around. And it's very relatable. Because again, when I'm with my friends, we talk a lot like this. We make the jokes and we're always goofing. So I do like the dialogue in here. I think it's fantastic. And about this time, Norman Brawler, Ray's friend, the one that helped write the book, Actually, I think it was, the book, when he left, he shows up and Norman's telling him that he's got a deal in New York with Warner Books for a second book, as he's talked about before. And so he's flying to New York. He wants Ray to fly with him to talk about, putting the book in paperback, and which will eventually lead to a second book. And Ray's like, hold on, I don't know if I want to see the book in paperback. The hardcover's already complicated my life. He's like, if we hadn't written that book, I'd sell My Secret Identity. He's like, but you don't. We did, you don't. And you won't lose anything else by letting a larger audience read about it. You yourself joked about writing another book. And he's like, look, Warner wants a few chapters of new material for this edition. We about the fire that killed your jungle friends. It might wake people up to the dangers of slash and burning clearing. And both Enrique and the professor's like, Enrique's like, well, he has a point, Ray. And the professor's like, and the money could help fund our research. So they're both kind of talking him into it. And so Ray agrees to it. And he's like, you go ahead and go talk to him. When you're ready, give me a call and I'll travel my own way. He's like, oh, noise, valuable time transit. I'd rather spend it here working with my partners. Norman, sorry, I'm laughing what's coming up. Norman's like, oh, you're going to go into research together? And the professor's like, well, I know, my boy. We're going on tour. And they start singing, by the light, not the dark, but the light of the silvery moon. And they just bust up laughing. I love this here on page 9. Norman's calling it, says Weisenheimer's, is Enrique and Ray and the Professor Hyde are all just busting up laughing at their little joke. And again, I keep saying it, but it's true. I think Roger did a great job on writing these people as real, or writing these characters as real people. It makes you care about them. He shows that there's a humorous side to them. I just think it's fantastic. I love the work on here. And then we cut to several blocks away where we have the CIA basically listening in on Ray and his friends. I guess actually they're tapping his phone because they're listening to Norman contact New York to make an appointment with the publisher for him and Ray. And as they're listening to Ray and Norman, they're being, I guess, listened to by Humbug, who's actually also imitating, he's intercepted their transmission to their boss. And he's, Bailey here, what's it? New York say, huh? Good work, Field. Good work, Fields. Time to close up the shop. And Fields, one of the CIA guys, close up. Are you sure, sir? Of course I'm sure. You two fly to Salt Lake City. Check in a travel lodge and wait for further orders. Got that? Yes, sir. Good. And after he hangs up the phone, Humbug's like, have a good time in Utah, boys. I'll give you regards to Broadway. Central Intelligence. Nah. What a couple of oxymorons. So I do love the fact that we do have Humbug showing, again, he's not only strong and able to copy other people's moves, but he's also very smart and he can apparently imitate people, because I'm assuming they thought they were talking to their boss, Bailey, and I would assume they've talked to him before, so they would know to an extent what he sounds like, and Humbug's able to duplicate that. So, and I don't know how much of it is Humbug himself or how much of it's his phone, because as he hangs up, he's got his handset. There's like 2 wires coming out of it, and there's extra wires going into the phone. So I'm not sure how much of that is just that connection there is allowing him just to tap into the phone and make himself seem like they're talking to the CIA headquarters, or if any of that is also helping with the voice impersonation. I'm not sure at this point where that's coming from. Is that a power of his, or is that tied into the phone contraption he has? It's interesting. I don't know. But then moving on, we go to Paul Hoban and Gene Loring's, I guess it's their law office. Yeah, it says their law office, where they're talking. And again, they're kind of having an argument, because Paul's looking something up and Gene's, well, you're in the wrong volume. And they're kind of arguing about the law. And then it comes out that Paul's upset that he saw Gene and Ray hugging, as we talked about when I talked about last episode with Chad, where Paul caught him and Gene hugging. And she's like, well, I told you we're grieving the deaths of Princess Wyotha and our people. It's never been easy for Ray to express his grief. I don't think he said let himself cry until, and Paul just cuts her off. Let's just drop it, okay? So again, we can tell that something, Paul is jealous of Ray. And again, as I've talked about before, especially when it happened during the first Sword of the Atom special, special, I believe it was, or was it the miniseries? No, the miniseries. When Paul was cheating with Gene, I guess Gene was cheating on Paul. Try that again. Gene was cheating on Ray with Paul. So I haven't liked Paul since his introduction because of that whole indiscretion, I guess we'll call it. I was going to say fiasco. I think indiscretion's a better word. But yeah, so if this was anyone else, I might feel a little bad for Paul. But seeing how he came on the scene and how he was part of the catalyst for Ray and Jean's divorce. Again, he's not entirely at fault. It's on Jean and Ray. I would say, and again, from my own personal thoughts on it, it's mostly on Jean. Because again, as I've said before, if you're unhappy in your marriage, you don't step out on your partner. You have a discussion. And if you can't work it out, you leave. You don't cheat on them behind their back for them to find out watching you, make out with your boyfriend in your car in the driveway when it's pouring down rain. Again, as I said, that image of Ray watching Jean and Paul make out and the rain pouring down is, I don't want to say scarred me per se, but it's left an imprint on me. So, as I've said. So anyways, but we're not talking about that incident at this point. You got hiccups. We're talking about their current situation where he believes that Jean and Ray have got something going on, which, as I was saying, it's kind of funny seeing how, but anyway, never mind. I'm starting to drift back to that. So we cut to New York 2 days later. New York City.
This stuff's made in New York City?
New York City?
Get a rope.
Sorry, just had to throw that in there. But anyways, in New York, the cab driver's dropping Norman off, and he's like, "Here you are, Mac. That'll be $13.65." And Norman's like, "Can I get a receipt for this for tax purposes?" And as Norman starts to walk away, he's looking at Warner Books on the 10th floor. The cab driver's like, "I know how important it is to keep track of things." And if you look, the first page we see him in where he's getting dropped off, he's in the shadows. So you can't really see who the cab driver is. But then if you pay attention, you can see here that the cab driver is humbug. Because again, he's got that, and he's bald, he's got the glasses on, you can tell he's got that jokerish grin. And then we got to the 10th floor where Norman's meeting with Mr. Griswold from Warner Books, kind of talking things out. And we have a window washer outside. And again, we can't really see much of him now, but as Norman asks, to use his phone so we can call Ray, we see the close up to the window washer. He's got a cap on. And again, it's not super clear because, again, as I said, with his glasses and nose on, he's kind of indistinguishable. But we can tell that this is a humbug cleaning the window. So, again, it leaves you questioning, well, does he have super speed? Or how did he get up here so quickly and change from the cab driver to the window washer of Schnitzler Window Cleaners? So it leaves some questions here as to what's going on. And because, again, this humbug, for one, it resembles him here. And it's also, he's listening into the conversation between Norman and Griswold. And then we cut over to Professor Hyatt and Enrica getting Ray ready to go over. And Hyatt's talking to Norman on the phone saying, he's just getting prepared. He'll be ready. And the professor holds the phone out. And as Ray jumps into the phone and shrinks down, does his transportation via phone, he's like, "A little traveling music, please." And so the professor starts singing, "When the deep purple falls over sleepy garden walls." I'm probably messing the melody of that up, but anyway, the professor's singing to get Ray across. And again, we have Enrique worrying that, she doesn't know if they did the right thing by encouraging Ray to pursue the book deal. That, he's endured so much heartache that she'd hate for him to go through it again. Because again, as we know, kind of the way she's been talking and moping the last few issues, and especially last issue when she saw Ray and Jean hugging, that she has feelings for Ray more than just on a friend level. So, and again, as I said, we continue in this book with the introduction to Ray, I guess, because we have Norman explaining to the book publisher how Ray shrinks down and rides the phone lines. It rides an electron stream over the phone lines and pops out. And again, we have Ray jumping out and transforming to full size, still in a suit. And as he appears outside, we get you can't really make him out, just a vague figure. But we got the window washer going, "There's my man." And so they sit down around the table and couch to talk about it. Ray's going on about how, how he wants to use this paperback to let the world know how the princess died and her people died because of the forest clearing and all that stuff. And so he if they are going to do a paperback version of the book, he wants it to try to make the world be more aware of some of the stuff going on. And as they're talking, a guy comes walking in, yo, coffee boy. And the publisher, Griswold's like, I didn't order any. They say, weren't you outside cleaning the windows? And again, Norman's like, that's the cab you brought me here from the airport. And Humbug's like, stop, you're both right. And as he throws down the coffee cups, it explodes. Boom, a big pink smoke comes curling up out of the coffee cups. Ray's like, get back, something funny's going on. Oh, you don't know the half of it. And Ray, as quick as he is, he shrinks down to, a couple inch high, shrinking underneath the knockout gas, when suddenly Humbug grabs him in a bag, like, surprise! And Ray, again, grows back to normal size. Like, you think a canvas bag would hold me? He's like, not at all. Well, I was hoping you'd grow out of it. And you did. And he punches Ray and then leaves. And Ray falls around. Everybody's questioning. He's like, well, he suckered me, but why did he duck out? And, he didn't seem affected by the gas. And Ray's like, I got some air in here. So he kicks down the door, and we see Humbug with the secretary tied to a chair, her mouth gagged, as he pushes the chair into Ray. And as he takes off after Humbug, I like this. We're on bottom of page 16. A couple panels here. There's 3 panels here at the bottom. One of Ray saying he's going to go try to find him for her to call the police. He passes an office of some guy named Carlin. He's got a coffee cup on his desk. Says, I love editing. Warner Brothers, Carlin, editor. I wonder who this guy could be. Obviously a reference to Mike Carlin, the editor of the Superman books. And he also edits some other book that I've been talking about. I can't remember which one it is. Maybe if I think about it, it'll come to me as I continue reading this story of Power of the Atom, written by Roger Stern and, who was it? Oh, yeah, edited by Mike Carlin. And that's one thing I was going to mention earlier, and I got sidetracked with the story. I do like the fact that, at the time, again, I don't know when you're listening to this podcast for the future people, but at this point in time that the story took place, DC was owned by Warner Brothers. In fact, it still is today. But so I do like that this story has, and probably easier to use Warner Brothers since Warner Brothers owns DC, and it doesn't give publicity to another company that's not owned by Warner Brothers. And also it helps with any, potential lawsuits or any complaints of using real world publishing companies when, DC has Warner Brothers. So I do like that they use Warner Brothers, or I guess they could have made one up, but they used Warner Brothers. So I thought that was interesting. And I do like that they threw Ray walking by Mike Carlin's office. So I wonder if this is what his office looked like. We don't see much other than the corner of his desk, but you have to wonder if he had that cup that says, I love editing, or if that was just thrown in there to give you a tip. And one thing, again, just nitpicking, because again, it's such a great story. The phone and his nameplate on his desk are both facing the same way. It seems like one would be facing towards Mike, the other would be facing towards the people sitting down, but just again, minor nitpick. Just getting this is such a great story. The next panel over, we see Humbug standing there, a fire extinguisher, waiting for Ray as Ray comes walking down the hall. And as Ray turns the corner, Humbug swings the fire extinguisher at Ray, misses him because Ray shrinks down and then grows big again, socking him in the face. And as he punches him in the face, his glasses and nose goes flying off. And Ray's like, nice try, but not fast enough. And the look here on top of page 17, the look of horror on Ray's face, like, your nose. I just love the Ray's expression when he punches Humbug's nose clean off his face. He's like, your nose. And Humbug goes bouncing away. He's like, I know, but how does he smell? Terrible, of course. And Ray's like, oh, fine. He's an agile lunatic. And so Ray jumps up, shrinks down, jumps up and grabs one of the lights hanging from the ceiling, leaps in front of him. And again, I like this. As the Humbug comes running towards him, he jumps up to knock into a solar plexus to knock him down. He punches him, knocks him through a window of some guys. I'm assuming it's an art team. And Humbug takes one of their drawing tables and throws it at Ray. He's like, the production's going to be a little off this month. And Ray's like, that blow would have knocked out most men. And that drawing table you up in, it must weigh at least 500 pounds. And so Ray's like, good, I don't have to pull any punches with this one. So again, they're fighting. Ray's using his size changing powers to shrink down again and jumps on top of the straight edge, whatever it is that Humbug is using to fight with. again, punches Humbug again, knocks him across the room. And as Humbug's laying next to a desk, Ray's like, okay, who are you? What's your game? And he's like, call me Humbug. That's your first clue. Mind games are my business. And this one's for you. And Humbug shoves his finger, breaks the light, and shoves his finger into the light on the desk that he's laying next to, just saying electrocuting himself. Just here, on page 19, he's like, bye! As, you see electricity just crackling through him, and the body starts shaking, and you're to show how much electricity he's pumping through his body at this point. And when's all said and done, Ray goes over and he finds that it's an empty shell, basically. He's like, he was solid. At least he was when I hit him. And next thing we cut to the police looking, seeing what's going on, examining the scene, and Ray's explaining what happened. And he's like, then he collapsed like a ruptured inner tube. I know it sounds crazy. And the police officer's like, you got that right. But all other witnesses saw the same thing. Another one's got a stick or something picking up the flesh bag, I guess, of Humbug, going, yeah, nothing, just a bag of skin. And Ray asks if he can go by the lab to check it out, maybe figure out where he came from. And he's like, if up to me, you can take him now, but you gotta make a request through proper channels. And Ray and Griswold come in, and they're like, what the, they're a little lightheaded, left from the gas. And Griswold's like, what a mess. This is unheard of. This is a golden opportunity. When news gets out about the Atom being attacked here, interest in the book will skyrocket. We'll have to include this incident in the new book. And one of the cops was like, publishers. And the other cop's holding the bag of skin. He's like, Dave, you want to take this? And then we cut to Humbug again in his lair with the voiceless voice? The disembodied voice, I guess is the best way to phrase that. It kind of admonishing Humbug, saying, what made you think it would, the best thing to do was attack the Atom in such a manner, attack him in such a public fashion. We don't want such a public confrontation. We want it. He's like, shut up. Who's doing this? You or me? I see how big a challenge that would be. Now that I know, the next movie will be ever so much more fun. And he starts laughing. And our story ends with, it's not labeled as such, but basically an epilogue of Paul Hogan kind of doing a voiceover, thinking and fretting about how, he must be crazy to think Gene could forget about Ray and all, again, he was a superhero. He has these powers. How can someone just, I guess, let that go or, not miss that? And so he goes down out of a wall. He moves a couple bricks out of the wall and he pulls out a box and he has the Atom's original size-changing belt. And he's like, gotta face facts. There's only one way to compare with Superman. You have to fight fire with fire. And this is what I was talking about earlier with the I don't want to say prelude, but the reference earlier that something was going to happen with Paul being upset about Ray and Gene. And so we find out that he's going to start using, apparently, it looks like he's going to start using Ray's size-changing belt. We'll have to wait and see what happens there. And then we end up with the next issue, Mightier Than the Sword. So again, great issue. The artwork, I haven't talked much about the artwork, but the artwork in this is great. Just a fantastic job on this book. Part of the reason why I love this story, or this series, I wanted it to go longer than it did, but unfortunately, But anyways, and then in the letter column, which is entitled Small Talk, just real quick, a gentleman named Dennis O'Fletcher from Rochester, New York, wrote in talking about how he liked the feeling. They're talking about issue 6. And what's his name? Dennis is talking about how he liked the feeling of the story similar to that of the originals. He wants to be seeing more stories in this vein. And the editor, I'm assuming it's Mike, is like, probably, now that we see how well issue 6 went down, his next question is, was that Maquette in panels 5 and 6 on page 1? I'll go back and look, but they say, no, it's not. And his third question is, will the Atom be a member of Just Like Europe? And again, Mike says, no plans for this, but as yet, they haven't officially asked him either, like Martian Manhunter did for Just Like International in last issue. So again, I just want to mention that letter real quick. But that's all really for this portion of What's in Head's Long Box. I was going to do another segment on Geeking Out with Head about the upcoming announcement. Not upcoming, let me try that again. With the recent announcement of James Gunn upcoming movies for the new DC Universe, but due to the late hour and this episode to be out in a couple of days, and I need to finish a few things, we'll talk about that maybe next month. Maybe I'll see if I can get a guest on. But we're not going to end it here. We're going to do a real quick
Mail time.
The mail's here. Here's the mail, it never fails. It makes me want to wag my tail. When it comes, I want to wail.
You've got mail.
So I haven't had anyone write in or make any comments I really need to read on the air or anything, but I did want to say that we do have our Patreon page, patreon.com/headcastnetwork. If you like what I'm doing on this or any of my other shows, please check out the Patreon page, and you can join great guys such as Gene Hendricks and Mark Ross, aka Clark Trent, and throw a few bucks in the tin. Again, I wanted to have a mail call just so I could announce those two guys, because again, I've been a little lax on giving them credit where credit is due. I give them credit over on the G.I. Joe podcast all the time, but I wanted to give them some credit over here also. So thank you two gentlemen for helping out over on Patreon. And also wanted to mention, while he's not actually a Patreon member yet, it looks like, we do have a follower of Brian Weebler. Please let me know if I'm mispronouncing your name, Brian, if you're listening to the show. Brian Weebler is checking out the Patreon, it looks like. So I do want to thank you very much again for looking into it. And again, another shout out to Cosplay Dad, who used to be a Patreon, but he dropped support of the Patreon of the Headcast Network. I'm assuming just because for a while there, and again, it happens on and off, my publishing schedule was a little wonky. Again, I apologize for that. I'm working on resolving that. Hopefully I've got something in the works now that will help me keep on a more regular basis with my shows, but we'll see. Anyways, that's going to do it for this episode of Head Speaks. Thank you very much for joining us here on episode
69, dudes!
Yes, I know it's infantile, but I had to do it one last time. Anyways, we'll see you next month here on Head Speaks, where we talk about issue 11 of Power of the Atom, and hopefully we'll talk about some of James Gunn's announcements for the upcoming DC Universe movies and TV shows. Until next time, remember, Head has spoken. Thank you for listening to another fantastic episode of Head Speaks. Hope you enjoyed it. If so, let me know. Drop me an email to head@headspeaks.com or visit our home at head.headspeaks.com. You can also visit and talk with me on Facebook and Google+, both under Head Speaks. You can also send an MP3 file with your thoughts, and I can play that on the air. And you can also get more of me on my other podcasts. Be sure to listen to Task Force X, where monthly I look at John Ostrander's Suicide Squad and Paul Kuppenberg's Checkmate comics from the 80s and early 90s. Also, over on G.I. Joe, A Real American Headcast, my podcasting friends Ryan Daly and Kyle Benning, along with myself, are looking at all of the G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero comics and related titles from Marvel and IDW. All of my headcasts are available on iTunes and Stitcher, along with the respective blogs and my main page at headspeaks.com. All comments, thoughts, and opinions expressed on Head Speaks are owned wholly by the speaker of said comments and do not express the opinions of Head Speaks, unless, of course, I'm the one making the comments. Head Speaks, Task Force X, and G.I. Joe, A Real American Headcast, are all part of the Headcast family. So join us next month for another wonderful episode of Head Speaks. Until then, I'll see you in the funny pages. Good night.